Hi, I want to thank everybody for coming. My name is Steve Appelbaum, and I am the president of Animal Behavior College. I also trained professionally for over 25 years and was the editor of Off Lead magazine. Although I'm not here in my capacity of former editor or as president of a vocational college, I'm really here as somebody that started a small business a number of years ago, and I wanted to share my roughly 30 years of experience I've had in image building, personal image and company image, which for new trainers can be a very helpful thing to have, and there's not a lot of information about it out there. When I started my business, I started my business a while ago, 1980. It makes me feel old. No comments. That was well before the internet, obviously. When I started it, I had no money. So basically, I started with business cards, and I couldn't even afford brochures. I just used flyers. Business cards went to veterinarians, and flyers went on supermarket bulletin boards. And that's essentially how I generated business for about the first 5 or 6 months. Veterinarians were an interesting bunch. I'd go into veterinary hospitals to try to solicit referrals. I felt a little insecure. I was young. Gosh, how old was I? 20, 21 years old. And there were trainers in there with significantly more experience than I had. And there were dozens of them. How was I going to stand out? Why would the veterinary hospital be any more inclined to recommend me? And in looking at how trainers conducted themselves, I came to the realization fairly early that a lot of trainers didn't follow what I had been taught were some basic business principles. Principles about how they ran their businesses and principles about how they basically conducted themselves. I noticed they were not all that responsive when it came to actually listening to what the hospitals were asking of them. They were so busy trying to project their message that they weren't hearing the messages that they were being given. And so I decided that I would essentially market myself. And that's how I looked at it, as I was marketing myself by doing things in contrast to what I saw some of the competition doing. And so when I went into veterinary hospitals, I really listened to what they were asking me. And yes, of course, they wanted to know if I had some experience, which I did, not a lot, but a little. Yeah, they wanted letters of referral, of course. But beyond that, I started hearing things like, we're asked questions all the time. Behavioral questions. How do I stop my dog from going to the bathroom in the house? My dog is chewing the couch. My dog is jumping all over people. And the veterinarians either didn't really have the answers because they didn't take this in school. It wasn't their area of expertise. Or they were just too busy. It wasn't their focus. Their focus was on medicine. The front office staff often didn't have a lot of information about this. And so here was something that they needed. They needed answers. And what a lot of trainers were doing is they were basically saying, well, if somebody has questions, give them my card. And then they can call me and they can get the questions answered, which really wasn't what they were asking. So I came up with an idea that I would create problem tips. And basically problem tips were exactly as they sound. They were just little sheets of paper with some simple solutions to common problems. Just enough to help people out, and enough that if they needed more information, they could get a hold of me. I had the number on the bottom. But it really wasn't just an advertisement. It was a legitimate attempt to help the veterinarians with their problems. Another thing, and they loved it, they were extremely popular, and I was able to get essentially information about myself into hospitals that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get into because there were 6 or 7 other trainers already in some of these hospitals. I was in Los Angeles, in the LA area, the San Fernando Valley. It's a pretty large population center, and there were literally dozens of trainers competing for the business. So this was really an eye-opener. I also heard other things from the veterinarians. We don't want your flyers in here. Okay, why? Because there's too many of them. There's 5 other trainers and everybody's got their stuff in here, and it's just a mess. It clutters up the waiting room. You guys don't clean it. We have to clean it. Some trainers are complaining that other competitors are putting their brochures in their holders, and it's just, we don't want to get involved. So it's more trouble than it's worth. So I came up with an idea that what I would do is I'd give them the brochure and the problem tips on floppy disks. This will tell you how long ago this was. Okay, because a lot of these hospitals were now starting to transition from essentially complete paper in files to computers, and the idea that they could put this on their computer and literally just hit a button and that little dot matrix printer would come, print this stuff out, not only appealed to the high techie in all their souls, but it also essentially dealt with another challenge they had, which is they could give a potential client information, they could give them solutions to problems, and they could do it without waiting room clutter. So standing out and presenting myself as somebody that was willing to listen and really come up with solutions that helped them. And in doing so, obviously, I was benefiting myself as well, was something that I learned pretty early on, was a very important skill to establish. Another thing that I learned was that a lot of trainers, and this is not meant as a shot at all trainers, this is just what I observed over the years, a lot of trainers didn't take their appearance very seriously. Okay, and so a lot of times they didn't dress in an appropriate fashion. And so I made it a point that when I went into a veterinarian's office, I was properly dressed. Now, we're in a profession where we're outdoors, we're working with animals, so I wasn't dressed in a suit and tie. I mean, that would have been kind of weird. They would have looked at me as a salesperson. But I wasn't walking around in shorts and jeans and a t-shirt either. I was dressed about like I am now, khaki pants, a button-down shirt. And a lot of trainers didn't do this. And I found, as even though it didn't make me a better trainer, that the perception people had of me when I was dressed, or had about me when I was dressed in an appropriate fashion, definitely changed. And I also felt like this was important because I was starting young, and I felt like I had a little bit of a deficit. Again, there were trainers that had many, many years more experience than I had. And so I didn't want to be looked upon as just some kid starting off. I wanted to be looked upon as somebody that was taking this very seriously, and that I was a professional. And it really helped, because I found that in about 3 years, I had all the business that I could handle. And I was doing this full time. I started hiring trainers to keep up with the demand. And by about 1986, I had 10 trainers working for me, handling the jobs that I just couldn't deal with anymore. This was strictly through veterinary referral. I mean, I'd like to say that a good chunk of this came from clients referring clients back, but I found that in this business, while that does happen, it didn't happen enough to generate the kind of consistent business that I needed to really do this full time. That was a very inconsistent kind of a thing. Clients would be very happy with your services, but they might not know anybody that needed the service as well. But veterinarians ran into people all the time. Now, about 1986 or so, I realized that I recognized that I needed to do group classes. I was doing exclusively private lessons, and I wanted to do groups. In part because I found that after 5, 6, 7 weeks of private lessons, the students that I was working with, they didn't need any more private work with me. What they needed was socialization, working with distractions, and I didn't need to charge them, the big bucks to do more private lessons. What I just needed was to be able to keep my eye on them for another 5, 6, 8 weeks so that I could help them to the next level. So I initially started group classes because I wanted to help my private lesson students, but I also recognized that there were people that simply, for a variety of reasons, were not going to be able to do private lessons, and so why limit my market? But I had a little bit of a dilemma, and the dilemma was I'd spent the last X number of years building a referral base through veterinarians for privates. I didn't want to go back to all of these people and basically say, okay, now I'd like you to also suggest this other program I have that's a fraction of the cost of the first one, because I felt that I would be essentially building one business at the expense of another. So I needed another source to offer group classes. And I figured pet stores would be a pretty good idea for that. So I approached a new pet store that had opened up in the San Fernando Valley. Now I looked at the way trainers approach pet stores, and they approached them in a very similar fashion to the way they approach veterinarians, which is what I called at the time, refer me because I'm good. And basically it worked like this. I'd walk into a pet store, and I'd approach the owner or the manager, and I'd say, hello, Mr. Owner, My name is, and I'm a professional trainer, and I've got 37 letters of recommendation to show you how good I am, and I can talk to you for an hour about training methodologies until your eyes glaze over. But basically what I'm bringing here is I'd like for you to refer clients to me because I'm good, and I'll help you because I'll recommend your store for product as well. And that's pretty much how trainers approach this. The pet store owner would get approached the first time and they'd be all gung-ho. But by the third or fourth time they got approached, without any real tangible way to prove how much they were benefiting from the relationship, they tended to be pretty ho-hum about the whole thing. And they'd either tell you they weren't interested, or they'd point you in the general direction of the register to tell you you could leave brochures or cards there, in which case you check back a week later and they'd be gone. So, I mean, and this was fairly typical. So I looked at this and I thought about it, and I approached them a little bit differently. First, I didn't just walk into the store and assume that they were going to have the time to talk to me. I actually called up and made an appointment, which seemed a little weird, but what it gave me was 15 or 20 minutes worth of time, and it also said to the owner that I took their time seriously. I walked in, and what I said to them was, look, I train classes, I train private lessons. You don't. Everybody in my class is going to probably need something as a result of what they take from me. Might be some equipment, they may need a leash or collar. We're going to discuss behavioral challenges, much of which are product oriented: chewing, digging, jumping, barking. I mean, not all product oriented, but a lot of it is. And I don't sell equipment, so any equipment sales that are generated as a result of this class are going to be for you. But what I really want to do is I want to make this a class that the first lesson is taught at the store. Now, I know this sounds weird because you can just picture these dogs walking around the aisles, but that's not what we're going to do, because what's going to even be stranger is I don't want the dogs here in the first lesson. I just want, we didn't call them pet parents then, we called them owners, but I just want the pet parents here for about an hour, because what we're going to do is we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss everything we need in the class. Everybody's going to need a leash, everybody's going to need a collar at the very least, and then we're going to discuss the various behavioral challenges that they have. How many of you have dogs that are jumping? You know, an X number of people are going to raise their hands. How many of you are dealing with chewing and digging problems? And then I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to start to touch on some of the basic solutions that they can utilize to help address this. And all of that, as strange as it sounds, we don't even need the dogs for. Now, the additional lessons that we're going to do, because this is a 7-week program, they're going to be at a park nearby. So don't worry, we're not going to have dogs in the store. I just want the owners here for the first week. Now, after the class is over, I'm going to hand everybody a general information shopping list. And then they're going to go around the store and they're going to buy what they need. They're not going to be obligated to, but chances are, since they're coming here and paying me for my advice, they're probably going to be pretty receptive. And that's going to be all yours, okay? What's more, because I want this to be our class, I'm going to give you a small piece of everybody's tuition in the class, okay? Because really what I need for you to do is I need for you to suggest that your students, your clients become my students. I need you to promote this class so that we can actually fill it. Now, the first time I said this to somebody, the owner looked at me and said, but how are you going to generate new clients for me if this class is going to be populated by my already existing customers? To which my response was, over time, we're going to generate new clients because they're going to tell other people and we're going to get a groundswell. But I'm not promising you new clients as much as I am an